my show had value, and that I'm sorry that that what I was doing had value. Had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I take this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize. And that it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, that or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them. Or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And so I'm not sorry. I'm just proud of my show. My show had value.
All right, here's the deal with this Joy Reid situation. The human part of me, wants to, you never want to glory in someone's downfall, right? If a person's losing their job, that means they're losing their ability to earn an income. And so as a Christian, I gotta kind of navigate around this situation and I need to be honest. I can have compassion and feel bad that she has lost her job. But at the same time, there are some glaring issues that need to be pointed out, in where I can't allow my compassion for a person to overshadow the truth and what we're really dealing with. So today we got to cut through the noise, right? We have to expose the lies, because there were a lot of lies told there. And then what I want to do is I want to remind you guys that common sense still exists, even if MSNBC clearly missed the memo. So this whole analysis that I'm going to give, it's going to be a little different. It may be a little similar to what you've already heard other content creators say, but we're going to talk about this Joy Reid and MSNBC letting her go. And we're going to talk about it from the perspective, because MSNBC as a business, they finally figured out, and I don't think they've completely learned their lesson. I don't think that. But I do believe that they finally have figured out that you can't have someone on the air who perpetually wants to hold the condemnation of the vast majority of this country, of the perpetual condemnation of white people. You cannot build an entire platform on that and think it's going to be mainstream. You just can't do that. And so the victimhood propaganda, all of the race baiting, and like I said, the victimhood, MSNBC realized, not because people were necessarily writing in saying, hey, this show is trash, get it off the air. People showed you how they felt about this show, Joy, because they stopped watching, right? People tuned out. I am sure there were a huge swath of even liberals at some point who got exhausted by a lot of this rhetoric. So, of course, the professional outrage class, they are going to be out here screaming racism at the top of their lungs because apparently Joy being fired couldn't possibly have anything to do with her dismal ratings, right? No, it must be white supremacists, and it must be a white supremacist conspiracy. And so I actually have a video pulled, and I'm going to break it down because, as always, there is a little biblical perspective to this madness. And so I'm trying to be careful in how I do it, but it's kind of hard not to talk about the elephant in the room. So I showed you the clip. Let's talk about what happened. This is the end of the readout. First, we need to start with the facts, right? MSNBC, in this desperate attempt to remain relevant, they are currently reshuffling their lineup. Kind of like CNN is realizing that too much Trump derangement syndrome is not good for business. MSNBC is doing the same thing. So the network is in serious decline. Their viewership has plummeted across the board, and Joy's show was no exception. Y'all, there are YouTubers out here that have better numbers than Joy Reid, and they don't get paid by a major network $3 million a year to do it. But she was being paid a whole lot of money, and there are YouTubers, just regular old Joes sitting in their basement, who had better viewership than Joy Reid. So that's the first thing. From a business perspective, the numbers don't lie. They just don't. According to reports, MSNBC, their primetime ratings were down nearly 53% by the end of last year. Can you imagine? Like, you're a business owner, and everything that you do is about making sure your audience, who is your customer, is well served and that you get the results that are profitable. If you start experiencing a 53% decline, at some point you like, okay, this gotta sink in. Let that sink in. MSNBC, they were hemorrhaging viewers like the woman with the issue of blood in the Bible. That woman was bleeding for 7 years. And MSNBC, they too have been bleeding out for a minute. The writing is on the wall. It's been a sinking ship over there. And instead of grabbing a lifeboat and Joy getting a clue and clearing up her racist rhetoric, Joy Reid decided to keep ranting about imaginary racism. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but half of her rhetoric, she was just making it up and inserting racism where none existed. So you had white supremacy, and everything was Republicans' fault. It was very one-sided. It was a lot of propaganda, and it almost seemed as if she was paid not to be a journalist, but to be a propagandist. And so when 53% of your viewership checks out, and then we hear you, I'm sorry you lost your job, but to be out here crying, talking about my show had value, the question you need to ask is value to who? Value to who? You might believe within your heart of hearts that what you were doing was valuable. But to say that my show had value, you need a follow-up question, and to say to who? If it wasn't to the vast majority of America, and they didn't lend their support by watching your show in exchange for the value you were providing, you need to ask yourself, perhaps the value that you perceive it to be is value to you. The marketplace said different. And so I thought it was funny because Rachel Maddow, she's the lesbian counterpart on the white side of MSNBC. She came out practically weeping and calling calling MSNBC's decision. What she said was she called it troubling. Let me see if I pull that clip. I think I have that clip so y'all can hear it. I want y'all to hear what she had to say. Because I'm going to provide some balanced commentary to piggyback off of what Rachel is about to say here.
An even bigger programming change is at 7 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern, where Joy Reid's show, The Readout, ended tonight. And Joy is not taking a different job in the network. She is leaving the network altogether. And that is very, very, very hard to take. I am 51 years old. I have been gainfully employed since I was 12. And I have had so many different kinds of jobs, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But in all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door. It is not my call, and I understand that, but that's what I think. I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got count them, two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
Okay. So Rachel Maddow here, she claims she's not weeping. Maybe I was just being a little hyperbolic by saying that she's weeping. But she does call MSNBC's decision troubling. In my opinion, I'm like, no, what's troubling were Joy Reid's ratings. That's why they fired her racist behind. Right? I'm sorry, the math was simply not mathing, okay? So she says that it was troubling, and then she goes on about how much she loves her, all of these wonderful platitudes, and I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. Here's my issue with the left overwhelmingly. They major in a whole lot of emotional platitudes. It's always a lot of emotion. But when you sit and tell them, the math is not mathing, 53% of the viewership is gone, and we don't know if we'll ever get them back. How do you have the nerve? How do you have the nerve to imply that the reason why MSNBC made the decision that they made is because of race? Rachel mentioned, she said, there are non-white individuals. No, she mentioned that two non-white individuals were being let go or whatever. She didn't specify who she was talking about. So you have her, then you had Keith Olbermann, yes, that lunatic, calling this company restructuring racist. And I'm like, the nerve of these two white liberals. These are two of the wokest white liberals sitting on MSNBC, sitting on the very network where they are still barely gainfully employed themselves, calling it racist. And I find it funny that neither one of these individuals, in a spirit of solidarity and support for their favorite black girl BFF, neither one of them quit their jobs in protest. Since you think it's so unfair and you think they're making a mistake, you ain't have no problem virtue signaling and hurling the accusation of racism toward the network where you are still collecting a check. How dare you? How dare you? This is why MSNBC is tanking, because you have rhetoric from this little lesbian, rhetoric from Joy Reid, and then all of the other race-baiting, race-trading, either they're white liberals or the black Jerome Crow Negroes, and they wonder why America is tired of this. America is tired. And let's not forget, you got the race hustlers on social media, right? You got the race hustlers on social media are doing the exact same thing. They are immediately accusing MSNBC of trying to whitewash their lineup. Never mind the fact that they're replacing Joy with other non-white hosts. No, granted, I disagree with their choice because Simone Sanders is not that much different. It's just another brand of racist, race trading, melanated Marxism. But it doesn't matter. Instead of them taking a look at the numbers and saying, Joy's numbers are not looking good. Like, they haven't looked good in a while. Maybe we should tell her If you love her so much, Rachel Maddow, why you ain't pull it aside and have a conversation? Say, you know what? Maybe telling white people that they are racist like every night, maybe it's not a good growth strategy. Maybe you should be a little bit more balanced in your journalism, if that's what you're calling it. I don't call it journalism, I call it propaganda. But they didn't do that. None of them ever do any self-examination. Here's what I wanted to mention. Joy has a serious lack of self-awareness. A serious lack of self-awareness. And a prime example of this self-awareness is when she talked about how she wasn't going to apologize for the fact that she went hard on several topics. And one of those topics that she went hard on that was completely embarrassing and showed us who she really was is when she talked about, she claimed that the removal of certain books, she didn't talk about how they was freak nasty perverse books, and she doubled down and defended that foolishness as if it was good and right. And how her guest is saying, are we serious right now? You know darn well that these books are targeting young children by putting sexually perverse ideas in their mind and teaching them things that have no business in the school. And Joy Reid defended that mess. And then she doubled down in the next breath talking about, she's a church girl and these things were of God. I'm like, what Christianity are you subscribing to? Because it ain't the God of the Bible. None of the things that Joy Reid was actively pushing as propaganda were righteous things that the Lord would approve of. I'm like, sis, I really wish you would have left the Lord out of this, because this about to go left real quick. It's about to go left real quick. She talked about that. Then she talked about babies in Gaza, and how America had a right to be upset. I said, wait a minute. You want to whine and cry and be woe is me about babies in Gaza, which you should. None of us were pleased with the bloodshed in Gaza, but you got bloodshed happening right here on American soil. It's called Black women exterminating their progeny in their womb, and you are silent on that. Why? Because you believe that we should have a right to do that when the people you claim to love, Black people, because ain't you one of the pro-blackity blacks, we're beyond the rate of replacement. We never hear you talk about restoring the Black family. You got a Black husband. You got 3 Black babies, but we never hear you talk about what can be done to strengthen the Black family. Instead, you want to push sexual perversion and baby murder. And then in the next breath, claim that it's all about your people. No, Joy. Those things are not of God. You going to a church and being a part of the church of the Lord Jesus are not the same thing. And so I found it very interesting, her lack of self-awareness. And now she's crying. She's crying because I get it. When you make $3 million, I have no concept what that kind of money is like. I ain't never made $3 million at one time. So the idea that you make $3 million and then they offer you a pay cut and you like, shoot, $3 million to $500,000, what am I supposed to do with that? The self-awareness should kick in and say, what are my superiors telling me about my content that I could make some adjustments and pivot to protect my job? But instead, nope. She went full bore in her Trump derangement syndrome, her lies, her propaganda, pushing a particular narrative. And the American people, you know what they did? They were like, we're not watching this. We're not watching. Contrary to popular opinion, Joy, you are not the center of the universe, and everybody, all things Black, everybody don't want to hear that all the time, especially when it's unbalanced and it's unfair criticism. It just is. Her content was very unbalanced. It was very left-leaning, and it was disingenuous. She did not engage in a meaningful way with her opposition. She never conceded the argument. She would always try to push the conversation in the direction she wanted it to go with and never engage in a meaningful way with the arguments that were actually presented. So we don't respect you as an actual journalist. We don't. Here's what I want to point out. See, in the world of the progressive left, If a black woman loses her job, it must be racism. It can't be because she's insufferable. Oh no, it can't be that. It can't be because people get sick and tired of the nonsense that she spewed nightly. No. How could that possibly be it? It has to be oppression. You making $3 million has to be oppression. The ability to get on a network to make $3 million and to be overtly racist and be unchecked, that's oppression. I need that kind of oppression. I need that. Even though everyone can see, read, and interpret the ratings of Joy's show, she and the people who claim to love her refused to tell that woman the truth. And this is why these darn liberals keep banging their heads against the wall. They have zero self-awareness. They're completely out of touch with reality. And they think that everyone in the world thinks progressive leftist lunatic. They think we all think that way. Joy wasn't fired because of her racism. She was fired probably because of her racism and because she wasn't good at her job, period. If you can't keep an audience engaged to where they are looking forward to tuning into you every single night, nobody's going to pay you $3 million just because of the symbolism of it all. They're not. Her show was whack. It was whack and it was racist. There, I said it. I said I was going to try to be nice, but shoot, it was super whack, super woke, and super racist. So, ain't but so many ways I could say that. But speaking of racism, let's talk about Joy's own track record, right? We can talk about her own track record. Perhaps this will jog her memory so that she can get a better understanding of why she was let go, right? Because this is the same woman. She called Uncle Clarence Thomas and Uncle Clarence, right? Because he done told the leftist line. I want you guys to take a look at a clip that I'm going to play. Give me a second. I got to get it queued up. I ain't used to playing all these clips like this, so let's see. Here we go. Listen to this, y'all.
Told by him, so we'll see.
Well, and the Supreme Court, and he mentioned the Supreme Court and was very specific about that. And he did telegraph
as if he could just take the election, call it over,
right?
Announce that there won't be any more voting, and that the Supreme Court will take over. That's not how it works.
It's not exactly clear that we can trust Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh and these others not to be just like Bill Barr. And so I think what scares people is that if he decides to do something that it legally makes no sense, and you're right, but Mr. Bauer is ready for him. But if somehow they manage to stumble into the Supreme Court, do any of you guys trust Uncle Clarence and Amy Coney Barrett and those guys to actually follow the letter of the law? No. I mean, it is a completely politicized Supreme Court that you can't just trust that they're going to do the right thing. Now, so far, the courts have actually been pretty good. So we'll see.
Brian.
I would only say that.
All right, y'all, this is the same woman who constantly, y'all heard it, the clip. She called Clarence Thomas Uncle Clarence. See, they think it's okay to hurl these pejoratives against people who look like them, who don't think like them, because in their minds, blackness equates to ideological homogeneity. If we think the same way, oh, then yes, you are black and we are black, we're the same. But if you're black and this person's black and you have a fundamental difference in worldview, oh, you not black. You ain't like us, right? This the same woman who constantly demonized white people on the air. And then let's not forget her hilarious attempt at revisionist history. When she said, I should have pulled the clip, she said that Republicans have always been the party of racism. There's that lack of self-awareness again. These Democrats, these leftists, I'm like, y'all you don't know who you are ideologically, because the idea that the Republicans have always been the party of racism, when for over 200 years, y'all have been the party of slavery, Jim Crow, the KKK, subjugation. I mean, I'm serious. I'm like, are you kidding me? They just lie. Joy built her career off of hating people who don't agree with her. She's demonized Christians, yet claiming to be a Christian. She claims to be a person of faith. She trashed conservatives, and then she made a living off of stoking racial division. Well, that may have been cool when people were out here high off of George Floyd, whatever he was high off of, all that hopium and all that white guilt. But now that people are awake and they realize that much of what the left has been lying about, they are awoke to that. The chickens have come home to roost. And I'm sorry. I understand having empathy for a person who has lost their job, but I don't feel sorry for her because she made $3 million a year being evil and hateful, pushing some of the most divisive rhetoric of the decade. Nah, I'm sorry. Nah, not today, Satan. I understand. My thing is, if you're that valuable, according to you, then you should have no problems pivoting and then finding gainful employment somewhere else. But here's the truth. Just like Don Lemon, who really thought he was more valuable than he was, and now he out here, he a TikTok star. Joy Reid is going to find that without the backing of MSNBC, she doesn't have a fan base. She doesn't have a group of people who are ride or die Joy Reid fans in mass to have substantiated and supported a $3 million salary. She doesn't have the numbers. And what a lot of these leftists are going to realize is that the population of people who want to join you in your hate fest of hating half of the country, it's real small. I know they loud and it makes it seem like it's a whole lot of them. It's a real small segment of the community of the American population that actually gains glory and revels in this kind of hatred. The vast majority of everyday Americans, one, we out here busy working, trying to take care of our families, and we don't want to continue to live in this divisive nation where racism is top of mind. Like everywhere we go, we got to look out for it because it's going to jump on you. And if it jump on you, once it's on you, you can't get it off. If Joy really believed in accountability, she'd apologize for the actual racism that she spewed on air for years. She would at least admit that, I've alienated more than half of the country. I've caused people to tune out. I was just a little unbalanced, right? But of course, that's not how this works. It's not how this works because in Joy's world, only white people can be racist. And Black liberals like her, they're just the truth tellers, right? And I'm here to say, I'm about to wrap this up, but no, Joy. Black people like Joy Reid, Roland Martin, Tiffany Cross, Jamel Hill, and others, those are a bunch of melanated, Marxist-minded Negroes who make a living off of race hustling. And now I guess this was just her turn because they done fired Jamel Hill, Tiffany Cross, all those other chicks. They all lost their job, and it was just her turn. And MSNBC is finally, they just told her the truth. And the truth is that her show was a disaster. It was hot garbage, stir-fried foolishness, marinated in dumb, just a hot mess. The ratings proved it. And so let's go ahead and just bring this full circle with a little biblical admonition of sorts. What I want to do now is just highlight a few verses and bring this full circle with a biblical perspective, because y'all know we don't just talk. We talk about the culture here, but we got to bring it back to the word of God. So Galatians 6 verse 7 says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap." I'm bringing that up because Joy spent years sowing division and bitterness and unrighteous hatred toward other image bearers who did not look like her. And when I say unrighteous hatred, I'm saying we are to hate the things that the Lord hates and love the things that the Lord loves. And unrighteous hatred is You're spewing hatred toward other image bearers that's baseless. You've not proven this. You've attempted to discern the thoughts and the hearts of others on the basis of an external metric, something dermal. Oh, because they're white, because they're male, it must be misogyny. It must be racism. It must be sexism. People are tired of that. And so she built her platform on lies, slander, and this endless supply of victimhood. And now she's reaping what she sowed, out here on the internet crying, claiming that her show had value. And like I said, my question to her is, valuable to who? To who? She used her influence to tear down people instead of saying, okay, we disagree. Let's use journalistic integrity and engage in a meaningful discussion. No, she wasn't a journalist. She was a propagandist. She came with an agenda, and she served effectively in her role as part of the Afrostocracy pundit class. That's what I'll call her. She's part of the Afrostocracy pundit class. And now, because the narrative that she was pushing is no longer profitable, unfortunately, MSNBC, they are discarding her. They discarding her like old fish grease. This is what happens when you base your entire career on deception and propaganda, trying to coerce people to buy into a particular narrative. And now that narrative is no longer the prevailing narrative. Eventually, the house of cards collapses. Last verse, Proverbs 16:18. Also, it tells us that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. It's hard. Joy was prideful. Okay, she believed that she was untouchable, and I get it. When you make $3 million, I'd be like, what? When you make $3 million a year and you aren't even that talented, I could see how a little pride can make you think a little bit more of yourself. You feeling yourself. Listen, if I'm making $3 million, it's going to be some days I'm feeling myself. I'm not too proud to admit that. Money changes people. That's why you need people in your life who be like, listen, I knew you when you was on there with them raggedy little hoodies, okay, and your hair, wasn't looking all that hot. I remember you when. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just need people that love you enough to be like, you need to pipe down, Macaulay, okay? All right, now, you still you. The point I'm making is I can see how a little pride, it can make you start feeling yourself. We're going to allow room for that. You just do. Don't act like if you start making $3 million that you're going to have a season where you be like, I don't know what happened. I lost myself, but I'm back, right? Because the people in your life are holding you accountable. She didn't have that. If y'all noticed, do y'all remember in the clip when she was crying, the gentleman that pulled up, I've Googled and I've seen pictures of her husband. Y'all, I think that was her husband. There's no way my husband is going to let me be crying about losing my job like that and hand me a tissue and then just walk off. He's going to be like, no. Turn the camera off. We're not doing this. You're better than this. You lost your job, but this is not the end of the world. You are not about to cry and get on here like you a victim. Pull yourself together. Y'all think that was her man who was just like, here you go. She's like, thank you. That's when the people in your life don't love you. Like I said, you start to get a little prideful. You start feeling yourself. I get it. But she thought that her constant race baiting would keep her secure at MSNBC forever, as opposed to looking at the writing on the wall and the warning signs that kept saying, America doesn't like this. They're pushing back. We need to pivot. That's how you add value to an organization. It's one thing, you have a primetime show in a nice slot. When you start seeing the tide shift, that's when it's time for you to humble yourself and you get on air and you say, well, you know what, America? Since I want to be a valuable voice in primetime mainstream news, we need to acknowledge that Donald Trump has won the presidency. And I've been very vocal on how I disagree with his politics. But in an effort to unify this country, we're going to provide some balanced coverage so that we can move forward as a nation. You can still still be a liberal, Joy, but you would have secured your job and more people would have been attracted to your show if they're like, Joy turning over a new leaf. Like, she actually gave us some news and it wasn't all of this one-sided political commentary. She was fair to her guests, but no, pride always comes before the fall. So here we are, or should I say, there she goes, because they done showed her the door, and now she is gone. So anyway, we don't need to shed tears for Joy Reid. She's gonna be fine. She's providing value, so she'll find another way to provide value. She'll probably land a book deal, or start a podcast that no one listens to, or make some guest appearance on The View with the rest of the cackling hens. And maybe she'll turn into a TikTok sensation like Don Lemon. I don't know. But this whole situation is a perfect example of why the left is losing the culture war. They're so disconnected from reality, and they refuse to acknowledge when their own failures are self-inflicted. Joy show tanked because it was garbage, okay? Not because of racism. No. Where's the racism? Simone Sanders is a black woman and about to take her spot. They're probably going to give Simone some rope so she can hang herself too. If she don't tone down that racist rhetoric, she going to find herself right there where Joy is, in the unemployment line. MSNBC did not fire her because she was black. They fired her because she wasn't worth keeping. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. No one was watching. And nobody was watching that mess. So for all the race baiters screaming, it was racism, and we need to do a petition. And this why we need black media. Newsflash, y'all tried that. You tried having an all-black network, and black folks did not overwhelmingly support it. They didn't. We've been here before. Here's my message to the left. You claim this country hates you. You claim that they'll never love you. I don't know why you need people to love you, but let's just go with the narrative. Let's just go with it. If these people hate you so much, why are you always forcing and trying to force and insert yourself into their spaces anyway? Which one is it? You either want your own stuff or you're going to demand that they give you access to their stuff, and you ain't never satisfied. You're always screaming how life is unfair. Listen, take notes. Y'all can have 1 million Zoom calls. You can start as many petitions as you want to. Boycotts, have at it. No one's listening to you, okay? Maybe people are just finally waking up to the grift. And now you actually have to create content of substance that resonates with more people. It's real simple. So, all right. Why is this camera? What's going on with my camera, son? Okay, thank you. It was